Okay. Good morning again. I'm Chris, this is David. We're going to be talking about a few things today around what we're doing at Compass, around innovation, but also how that links to food safety and food quality. Quick straw poll though, hands up who's heard of Compass Group? I'm very impressed, most of the room, very good, okay, excellent. I had a big speech now as how disappointed I would be that many of you don't know who Compass are, what we do, etc, etc. But for those that don't know, in essence we are one of the world's largest food catering providers. Within the UK and Ireland branch, we are made up of lots of individual constituent parts. Each of these logos on the screen represent a different sector of the economy that we provide food service to. We have the glamorous boys like Levy, the Jockey Club, Keith Prowse, who provide catering to a lot of the sports venues, the big conference venues, the O2, etc. They get all the big gigs. David and I work in probably the most important sector and the largest in the UK, which is the business industry sector. And the name really says what it does on the tin, which is we provide good quality and safe food to a lot of the businesses and industries within the UK. So that's, in a nutshell, who we are. But we also do catering within the education sector, the healthcare sector, the defence sector. As I say, lots of individual parts. But we're going to talk about what we're doing within the business and industry sector. So, over to you, David.
Good morning. We're going to try not to jump about backwards and forwards too much because that gets a bit annoying. So I'm David from the marketing team within the business and industry division at Compass Group. And we're just going to talk to you about how insight really is the most important part of what we do. It's at the heart of everything that we do, particularly when it comes to innovating and developing our menu offering. So what I'm going to do is just talk you through some of the sources of insight that we look at and have available to us. So looking at what our customers are doing and saying, looking at what's happening on the high street, really important part of that. The published information that's available, whether that be through general media or specialist food industry publications, and then also about how we commission our own research as well to really dig down into specifically our customers. And then how we take all of that information and bundle that into our menu development process, which I'll talk you through as well. So first up, understanding what our customers are doing is really important for us. So as well as looking at how they're behaving in terms of spending patterns and looking at our EPOS data, we've also got a customer feedback program called Did We Make You Smile, which is live across all of our business and industry units. And it's a really important way for us to allow our customers to feedback to us on a regular basis, however frequently they want, to let us know about their experiences in our restaurants. It's an initiative that's been in place for a few years now, but I think the unique challenge that we've got when it comes to catering within the workplace is that we've got this finite population that we're serving every single day. So their will and desire to continue to give us feedback is kind of rapidly depleted versus somewhere on the high street where they're serving new customers every day so they can maintain those levels of feedback which will help them steer their offering. So we had a bit of a review of this earlier on this year and we relaunched in March this year with a multi-platform program which allows customers to give feedback however they see fit. So we still have comment cards that people can fill in and send back to us if that's how they want to do it. There's a live website portal that they can go into at any time, whether that's on their computer or their phone or tablet, and feedback to us. We've introduced mystery shoppers, which is something that people always said can't be done in the workplace because we've got the rigmarole of getting people signed in at reception and things like that. But actually that's proving really important for us to get an objective view of how we're doing on a daily basis. And we've also invested in a number of tablets as well. So every site across the country has the opportunity to have a customer feedback tablet kiosk in their restaurant for 2 months of the year, 1 month at a time. And we've trialled it out and we saw that actually if we left that tablet in situ for longer than a month, it very rapidly becomes part of the furniture and people aren't using it. So it's proved a really valuable tool for us. And last year, over the whole year, we gathered 13,000-ish responses. From the previous program, and since relaunch just in the first 6 months we've already gathered over 20,000 responses. So it's really showing us that we're able to increase the level of feedback but also maintain that on a month-by-month basis. And the interesting part of that for us as well is that people are really willing to give feedback when you give them the opportunity. So the survey is kind of split into two parts. So we've got the first couple of questions, or what give us our scores for our KPIs around customer satisfaction and net promoter score. And then they can choose to opt out of the survey at that point. But actually 90% of the people that are filling out the survey continue to go into much more detail, which is really useful and important for us when we're looking at that information to build our offer. Published insight is really important for us, and as I say, that can take any form. So, the newspapers are always covering food. It's a really hot topic for consumers at the moment. And we also have a number of subscriptions to the industry publications as well. So this is a graph that I love from the Food People. It's an organization that we subscribe to and receive their newsletters. And this is a really great way of plotting where cuisine trends are in terms of their popularity. So along the bottom axis, you've got how popular the food cuisine type is, and along the vertical axis you've got the influence of that cuisine. So essentially, the further right you get in the top corner, they're the really established and most popular cuisine types, and you'll see some of those there: American, British, Italian. Those are some of those core cuisines that have been around for a really long time. And for us, when we're looking at that kind of clump in that top right, that's our daily bread and butter. That's the stuff that we really need to make sure that we've got nailed and we're delivering consistently into a great standard. But also making sure that we're dropping in new recipes into those cuisine types to make sure that we're keeping it alive and fresh. When you look at that middle cluster of cuisine types, that's where we can start to filter these into the workplace outlets. So looking at things like the Mexican and Japanese food there, this is the things that we've kind of developed, and you can start to see that that's getting that broader appeal, and we can introduce those into the workplace. On the bottom left-hand side, this is where we're really starting to look at those early adopters and the real innovators, and you get a lot of this in the kind of startup business on the high street. And for us, where we're catering to people, we don't necessarily need to be sitting in that bottom left-hand corner, but it's important that we're keeping an eye on it, because some of them will reach that top right-hand corner. So how can we make sure that we're building our menus and offer to make sure that we're accounting for that? But also having an eye on the ones that might not even make it to the top right and just kind of buckle over and become part of a fad, and see how those things are short-lived as well. The high street is a really important source of information and insight for us. A lot of innovation is led out of the high street, and so it's important that we're always kind of traipsing the high street. I think for us internally, it often seems like it might be a bit of a jolly or a nice thing to do, to go out and see what's happening, which it is. You get to go out and spend a day eating, which is no hardship. But actually, it's a really important way for us to make sure that we're seeing what's happening and seeing what consumers are seeing out on the high street, because that's their frame of reference when they then come and eat with us in the workplace. No matter how comparable it may or may not be, that's definitely where they're seeing those cues come from. And I think the important thing to demonstrate here is that there's great innovation happening all over the country. I live in London, and it's easy for me to kind of get sucked up into this bubble of what's happening in London. But actually, earlier this year, we took our clients on high street tours across all of these cities across the UK, and you can just see some really great stuff happening in each of those. And these are some of the examples from those tours that we did. So the Boozy Cow in Edinburgh, if anyone's been, there's a really great kind of dirty burger joint, really great beers in there as well. Dishoom in London, really great innovative breakfast offer, particularly when it comes to looking at Indian cuisine as well. So really great opportunity to see what's happening, and we task each of our colleagues, particularly our chef community, of course, to really make sure that they're out there having a look at what's coming on the high street. And lastly, we commission our own research as well. And as I was kind of alluding to there, people behave differently when they're eating at work. It's a very different transaction and experience to when they're eating out as a leisure activity when they're on the high street. So we kind of take all of that insight that we learn from our customers and from what's happening on the high street, but then frame that into some questions and some opportunities to dig a bit deeper when it comes to eating at work. We, earlier this year, released our Eating at Work report. It's actually the European Eating at Work report. So we looked at, across 18 countries, how people's eating habits are different and are changing as well, because this is something that Compass has done historically in the past, so we're able to track movement. The interesting thing for the UK, 34 minutes is the average lunch break. So we call it a lunch hour, but that's definitely not the case for many of us anymore. And by the time you've left your desk, you've gone to the outlet that you're going to, you've made your choice, you've queued up, you've paid, you've eaten, you've got back to your desk. It's actually a very short window of time that we've got to capture those audiences. So it's really important for us that we're developing our menus and also the ways and formats that we're looking at as well. So grab and go is becoming such a huge important part of what we do because of that time pressure as well. 67% of people still have a sandwich for lunch. You know, it is the main thing that we love in this country to have for lunch. So how are we innovating in terms of our sandwich ranges as well as the hot food that we offer as well? So as I say, we take all of that insight and we feed that into our innovation processes. So we work 6 months in advance, which is always fun when you're eating kind of Christmas goods in the hottest days of the year in the summer. That is a really kind of managed process that takes all of those different stages. So we start with the insight, we'll then look at what our offering is and identify where those gaps are, where there's needs for improvement. That forms a brief that goes into our chef community who go away and build up what those offers and recipes look like. Then, in conjunction with our support team, so our nutritionists, health and safety will then get involved to make sure that we can deliver that for a way that's right for our consumers. And then we launch it into our business. So these are just some examples of some of the concepts that we've launched over the last year. And you'll see very much so, particularly when thinking about that graph of cuisine types, we've really tried to play on some of those. So the Mexican burritos, the American concepts, whether that be through mac and cheese and loading as much different toppings as you can onto that, my personal favorite, or the coast-to-coast diner. But also on top of that, you've got the seasonal bit. You know, seasonality is really important to our consumers, as is that local sourcing opportunity, and health and well-being is the key too, and that's something that comes out of our customer feedback. Customers are always telling us that they want to see more healthy opportunities. And the other thing that comes out of that as well from our customer surveys is around variety. So as I said, you know, we've got this captured audience. Variety is key to make sure that we're able to convert them as frequently as possible and really appeal to what they're looking at. So this is, as I say, just an example of some of those concepts that we've launched over the years. So I'm just going to pass you over to Chris now. So talking about how we launched those in a health and safety way.
Thank you, David. So, how does all of that excellent stuff that David's talked about link to food safety and food quality? Well, as you may recall, back in December 2014, the wonderful food information regulations came out and required food service providers like ourselves to have much more control and much better and more accurate information regarding the allergen content of the food that we are serving to the customer. So that proved a challenge because at the end of the day, not only was this a legal requirement now, but for me and for our business, this is a reputational requirement. We cannot afford to be one of the world's and certainly the UK's leading food service provider if we are getting our menus wrong and providing food that is not safe, and certainly to those that have allergen issues and allergies to give them food that's not safe. So it's very much at the heart of what our business is about, is that reputational image that we uphold. I think also what's important to frame here before I move on is that chefs are great at cooking and preparing food. Chefs are rubbish at filling in compliance documents and bits of paper. They hate it. So part of what the strategy was is to also make it simpler and easier. In my world, in the world of compliance, if we make it simple and easy, it will get done. If we make it complicated, lengthy, boring, time-consuming, or a pain in the arse, it won't get done. So very much we had an opportunity here of linking the two together. So an innovative customer-led menu and a fixed menu with lots of choice in that fixed menu gives good allergen management. Because what we have now is we have our internal recipe book, which is called The Source. And our units will log on to that system and they will create their menu for the week ahead. referencing some of the great offers that David's talked about, but they have the choice to choose, right, okay, this is my menu for next week. And they build that menu using pre-existing recipes, which we know, and I know, are using approved suppliers and approved ingredients. And because we are using approved ingredients, I know for a fact what the allergen content of those ingredients are. So ultimately, for each recipe within that menu, we have an allergen report for that particular recipe. So all the units need to do is to print that recipe off. They have the allergen information already in there, and if the customer requires it, we can use it. So they don't have to start to look at the label and look at the packaging and start to build the allergen report manually on a bit of paper that may or may not happen. And we make that report available, as I say, on request. There is a backup system, which is a manual process, but very much our business is driving compliance through using the source recipe book to build their menus, because we know, absolutely guarantee, that that will be up to date using approved ingredients with the right allergen information that sits behind that. So they have basically a bespoke allergen report for their menu for next week. So what about front of house? It's a two-stage process. It's all well and good having a fixed menu and creating the food to that menu, but if our colleagues at the front end are fielding questions from the customers around, does this particular dish have nuts or shellfish or whatever it is, if they are not well informed, then all of that great work at the back of house could be undone. So we have a specific allergen e-learning module that all of our front of house staff complete. That gives them all the background regarding the food information regulations, how important it is to make sure that we are getting allergen control right, and also goes into detail around what the sort of questions they may be asked by the customers, what's the sort of information that they should be giving, even going into looking for the signs of an allergic reaction. So if somebody does start to have a reaction in one of our units, our front of house staff will hopefully be able to recognise those symptoms and deal with that very, very swiftly. So knowledgeable colleagues equals knowledgeable customers. And because that process flows through now, we have really accurate, tight information regarding the allergen content of each and every recipe on that menu for today. We will print that report off. It will sit in the back office, ready and waiting should any customer ask the question. We have all the detail there, and obviously with the training that we provide, our colleagues are well informed and can give the right answers. The final stage of the process is to then have an audit trail. David mentioned, did we make you smile? He also mentioned the mystery shopper program, and we have introduced a specific allergen question into that mystery shopper audit. So when the mystery shopper turns up at any of our units and queues up and orders a dish off the menu today, they will ask a specific question. Does this particular sandwich have egg in it? Does this particular curry have nuts in it? And they will then mark, not visibly, but in their head, they will then mark whether that colleague follows the correct process, follows their training, and more importantly, gives the right answer. We then track all of this data, and we then have a workshop that we can roll out to any unit that consistently fails that question. With this particular question now being in place, we have really good level of information to show that yes, our units are following the approved recipes and our colleagues are giving the right information. So we're joining up the back of house process to the front of house process and auditing it to make sure it is compliant. And that way we can then make sure we are doing everything that we need to do to protect our customers at the end of the day. So that's how we are joining the information David's talked to a food safety, food quality perspective. Back to you.
Cool. So just to summarise, as you can see, we've spoken about the insight and our different sources of that, how that feeds into our menu development process, and then how we can keep that delivered in a safe and secure way for our customers. I think we took these two titles very literally and decided to just marry the two into one presentation rather than perhaps separating them out. So that's just an overview of how we do it at Compass, and I think we may have some time for some questions if there are any.